So how good is Gifts Ungiven and should you play it? Well, that's what we're going to try to answer inside this video by using tournament statistics and data. So it's a card that's been banned before but now become legal, and therefore the data is going to be a little bit limited, as it's going to contain data in this where it was legal before. Now I currently have a total tournament entry count of 20,895 from all possible variations of commanders, including commanders that actually can't play Gifts Ungiven because they're not on the color identity of blue. But from those 20,000, we have 1,659, a total inclusion rate of 7.9% that have played or have Gifts Ungiven inside the decklist that they entered into the tournament with. Now the average win rate on all of those commanders that have entered into tournaments is down to 16.43%. A big reason for this is that a lot of games sometimes, quite, well, a reasoned amount goes to draws and don't result in any win. You would think that a player pod with 4 players would achieve an average win rate of 25, but it's actually at 16.43. While those that have had Gifts Ungiven inside their decklist have achieved an average win rate of 22.53, which is an increase by plus 6.10%, which is really good. We can do the same thing with Intuition, just to make a comparison. Intuition has been legal for quite some time, much higher inclusion rate, around 21%, 4,522 have actually included, in comparison to Gifts Ungiven, 1,658. But still the same win rate. They are, in other words, performing somewhat quite equal. But here's a problem. This kind of way of looking at data doesn't really say if Gifts Ungiven is good. It is just saying that decks that are legally allowed to have Gifts Ungiven might be good. Because commanders like Italy, Venota, non-blue decks can't play Gifts Ungiven and therefore don't have access to Rhetoric study and such. So just clumping everything together like this is a little bit strange and doesn't say it properly. Instead, we're going to look at individual commanders' win rate and compare that with how they have been doing when they've been playing Gifts Ungiven, like Kefka Court Mage. However, I'm using Kefka here as a good example because there's a lot of commanders in my data, unique variations of commanders, and a lot of them just have too few games to really say anything worthy. While we have some that are super popular like Najeela and Glarb. This is the most played tournament pair or tournament option brought to tournament. And here we can see we have a 25 split, so we have 25% that have included Gifts Ungiven inside Glarb and Najeela, and they have achieved a win rate that is super close to the total average, plus 0.45, which in final words means that Gifts Ungiven is good, but it doesn't increase your win rate that much. And here we need to look at Kefka Court Mage. Now you can see that the win rate is in red, minus 5.87, compared to Kefka's average win rate at 23.52. However, the amount of games Kefka totally has is 93, while 18 have included Gifts Ungiven. So the final word here is that this is not a certainty. And that if, for example, I know what all of you are going to do. You're going to write in the comments, what is the win rate of Commander X and Gifts Ungiven? And the answer is going to be, we don't have enough data to that. Say anything on that, so sorry. But we are going to take a look at all kinds of variations where we kind of have some data. So Najeela and Thrasius, Gifts Ungiven has an 116 games where the win rate is minus 0.05. It doesn't change a dent in Najeela and Thrasius win rate. I have been looking at a lot of different variations of commanders that has a lot of games that could potentially play Gifts Ungiven, like Kinnan. I just threw it in here. Now the game count here is only 28, but I want to point out this. Kinnan has a very high popularity vote. A lot of people are playing Kinnan a lot, like 1,417, while only 28 have included Gifts Ungiven. In other words, it looks like a card Kinnan shouldn't play. So here we suddenly have saying that some commanders should be on Gifts Ungiven, while others clearly shouldn't. And this is basically decided by the popularity vote of players choosing not to include Gifts Ungiven on a high rate. The same thing can be said about cEDH, however, apparently here, no, first and foremost, we only have 8 games of 742 that have included Gifts Ungiven inside cEDH, and they have apparently performed great, but that does not mean true. I have heard and seen that a lot of cEDH players have been moving more and more towards like an undual breach cEDH, which I actually think is correct. And in those situations, I do think that Gifts Ungiven is really good. So I think that there's a reason for cEDH to experiment more with this, but in her core concept, Gifts Ungiven doesn't. On the paper, these two should really enjoy Gifts Ungiven. Rograkh and Thrasius are undual breach or has undual breach as an option. However, I have actually looked deep into this commander pair and found that undual breach is not a core concept into their gameplay. Rog and Thrasius are basically Gaia's Cradle Storm. And sure, Gifts Ungiven could tutor for Gaia's Cradles and ways to move it from grave into play, but they already have a lot of tutors for lands with green, and Gifts Ungiven is more a concept for Undual Breach when you have Sevin's Reclamation, and in my video I found that they are not that focused on Undual Breach, so I can really see where this card is dragging down the win rate, and not so popular by the way as well in this commander pair. Here, however, we have Kenrith, the Returned King, and I kinda enjoy this commander. I think he's a very cool commander. I don't want to see him disappear. He's in like the middle ground. He's around an average win rate of 21.87, which basically means that he's not in a dominating position, but he's also not in a struggling position. If you bring him to tournaments, you're gonna do fine. Now he has 15% inclusion rate of Gifts Ungiven, basically 40 from his 258. However, when he's included it, they have performed really good. You can see a win rate plus 5.66, which is a big increase up to 27.53. So Kenrith seems to be benefiting a lot from Gifts Ungiven, and the reason is quite simple. You can use this to assemble your Undual Breach combo, and you have access to white, so Sevin's Reclamation is gonna be in the package too. But if you get into the very long game, the super late stage, the part where creatures go to your graveyard is not a big problem, because Kenrith can just reanimate. So the final verdict here is that we need more games to see if Gifts Ungiven is really a good card for Kenrith, but there is definitely a potential here for an upgrade for the Kenrith in general. You could say there is a potential here that Kenrith might be the commander that is benefiting the most from Gifts Ungiven becoming legal. We obviously have to look at Rograkh Cilia's Rogsai, 750 tournament entries and 45 have included Ungiven, giving it an inclusion rate of 6%. And here we have to say once more that the sample size is quite small, so just like we said with Kenrith, we're only seeing potential here. However, the potential is really clear, plus 2.01%. That is a big increase. Average win rate is 24.81, and it goes up to 26.82. And this is a big Undual Breach commander pair, like they're going for Undual Breach quite a lot. So here it definitely looks like Gifts Ungiven is a card you potentially should play inside Rogsai. But we need a little bit more data to say this with a certain. Same thing will be said with Inalla. She has 25 games, including Gifts Ungiven, which is very low. However, those have showcased a very good promising result of increasing the win rate by plus 2.3%, which is really good. She could theoretically benefit quite a lot with Gifts Ungiven, and basically making it into a one-card combo. Because Inalla wins with one-card combo Spellseeker and just 4 mana. Here, you can cast Gifts Ungiven and find your Spellseeker, and then just 3 other reanimation spells. In the end, they are probably going to give you the Spellseeker, because the reanimation spells you're going to find are gonna be Unearth, Reanimate, and Animate, or something of the sort, and those are cheaper compared to Spellseeker's free mana. You could also cast this in instant speed during an opponent's turn and find, let's go, Force of Will, 2 reanimation spells, and a Spellseeker. And here it really does not matter what they give you. You're either going to end up with the 2 reanimation spells, Reanimate and Unearth, which means that if they counterspell the first reanimation spell, you can cast the second one. If they give you Force of Will and Spellseeker, you can still cast Spellseeker and have Force of Will, or actually just go with Pact of Negation in this case, but have Pact of Negation protection. Or they give you Spellseeker and a reanimation spell, which means that you can first cast your Spellseeker, they counterspell that, and then you reanimate the Spellseeker second. Overall, Gifts Ungiven is really setting you up to assemble a core victory with Inalla. And if that's out of the way, then you just assemble something of an Underworld Bridge package instead. So I can really see how Inalla, similar to Kendriff, is benefiting from Gifts Ungiven in other variations compared to the core concept of Underworld Bridge. But of course, I did, like I said in the beginning of the video, take a look at variations of commanders just because I should and can, even those that in my opinion, shouldn't play or wouldn't play this card, but still has a lot of entries and are on the color identity of blue. So Tivit is a fairly popular commander with almost 500 tournament entries. From those, 30 have entered into tournaments with Gifts Ungiven and performed really good. Plus 3.18% increase to the total average win rate. That is really promising result. It is actually moving Tivit from being in the middle ground area to the top end area. It's actually giving you a better win rate than Rograkh. Why is this? I don't know. My speculation is that obviously you're finding Time Sieve and then Sevin's Reclamation. But then what? Thassa's Consult? If you find Time Sieve, Sevin's Reclamation, Thassa's and Consult, if they give you Time Sieve and a Consult, you can toss Time Sieve and win the game. If they gave you Consult and Sevin's Reclamation, you can do Thassa's Consult with the Sevin's Reclamation flashback, or well actually you can flashback both when I think about it. So you flashback Sevin's Reclamation from the graveyard, bringing back potentially both Thassa's Oracle and Time Sieve. You know what, when I actually think about it, so here's a big thing why I love tournament data analyze, is that I have a lot of speculations of how things are going to work out in practice, no, in theory. But when you look at data and you see the results, you're starting to say like, maybe my theory was wrong. And you start questioning yourself, how is this actually good? And now that I think about it, this is really good. And here we can actually do another takeaway. Once again, if you have a 2-card combo and you have Thassa's or Consult, another 2, so you have 2 different 2-card combos, one being Sevin's Reclamation in this case, you're like always going to assemble your package. If you actually think about it, if you're playing Esper, which this is by the way, if your package is Consult, Tainted Pact, Thassa's Oracle, Sevin's Reclamation, it's gonna be really hard for them to prevent you from going for your Thassa's combo. Because if they give you Tainted Pact and Demonic Consultation, you could potentially use one of those to tutor for mana, like a Lion's Eye Diamond. Yeah, you could do that. Or you could use it to tutor for a reanimation spell to reanimate the Thassa's Oracle from your graveyard to put it into play. Or you just flashback for 5 mana, Sevin's Reclamation, your Thassa's Oracle, and maybe something more, and then use one of your Demonic Consultations variations there to win the game. But the part where you're adding or removing Tainted Pact with Time Sieve here just makes it so much better. And that can also be said with the Tymna and Thrasius. So you have Devoted Druid, Hazel Brewmaster, Swift Reconfiguration, and a reanimation spell. That should do it. Or you could throw in Thassa's Consult in some form of mix in that concept. Or yeah, you get my point. We need to look at more commanders. So here we have Najeela the Blade Blossom. Here I actually want to say something. So Najeela has a total count of 335 tournament entries, and she has been struggling. She has 32 games where she's included Gifts Ungiven. On paper, Gifts Ungiven should be good here, because Najeela sometimes goes for that Underworld Breach as a secondary option. That even Najeela, plan A, Thassa's Consult, or Underworld Breach, plan B, or vice versa. However, I have noticed that in general, Najeela's win rate is going down. So I do think that the low win rate here, minus 1.77, could just be because Najeela is struggling in general, and it's starting to look like she's not a recommended commander for tournaments. If she actually keeps losing like she is, she really might just be in Yuriko win rate territory eventually. And it might just be so that Gifts Ungiven isn't helping Venota stay at the old win rate she once had. I might need to make a video about Najeela's low dropping win rate in general, because she is actually going downwards, and she might actually one day have the verdict of being not recommended for tournaments. Moving on, we have Glarb. That is similar, no, not similar to Najeela, or in some case similar to Najeela. Glarb is actually in the struggling area. However, here we see 38 tournament entries with Gifts Ungiven inside Glarb, and it pushes the win rate up to plus 4.39%. Gifts Ungiven is actually a card you can cast from the top of your library with your Glarb, so I can see some synergy here. In the end, the amount of games here are just too low, so we can't say with a certainty that this is the fundamental truth. We have to gather more data over time to see if this sticks. But for now, it's looking great, and it looks like you should be trying out Gifts Ungiven in Glarb, and over time we will see a true result. So overall, it's kind of tricky to actually say a true verdict for Gifts Ungiven, but in general we can say this: it hasn't hurt the format one bit by making it legal. Having it in the ban list to protect the format from going too bonkers wasn't necessary. Gifts Ungiven hasn't broken the format, as just an overall, it seems to be improving the win rate for some commanders here and there, but not for everyone. In other words, it looks like a potential auto-include for some commanders, while others should not play it, and others just has it as an personal choice option. In other words, it doesn't really matter if you play it or don't play it. You should play it if you enjoy it and you are quite good at operating with it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this short card tutorial review and tournament analyze for Gifts Ungiven. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one.